Good evening. Everyone in India, particularly those of us in the media, have been following closely the disgraced fall of Wall Street honcho Rajat Gupta's trial and the sentencing ever since he was accused of breaching privacy and securities law in the US and accused of insider trading. The particular instance when Gupta was accused of giving sensitive information that was privy only to the board members of Goldman Sachs, the investment bank that Gupta served as a director. Gupta was accused of passing on tips to his old friend, billionaire and founder of the Galleon Group, Raj Rajaratnam. Gupta's sentencing comes exactly a year after he was charged with securities and conspiracy fraud, for which he had faced a maximum of 25 years as a sentence, and marks a stunning fall from grace for the Indian American who rose through the ranks to become one of the most prominent titans on Wall Street. Gupta's 2-year sentence is a lot less than the 8 to 10 years that the prosecutors had sought for him. It is also less than Rajaratnam's prison term of 11 years and the US $92.8 million fine that the Sri Lankan had been ordered to pay. Prosecutors say Rajaratnam earned up to $75 million illegally through his trades, while Gupta's attorneys point out their client earned no profits, not even a single cent. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on The Big Picture, we discuss the state of insider trading laws in India and around the world. We ask our panelists to shed some light on this highly illegal activity that, despite curbs employed by SEBI and the government, still continues to take place in our country. And to talk us through the Rajat Gupta sentencing and the fallout of the sentencing, and to discuss better ways of checking this white-collar crime, I have with me in the studio senior lawyer in the Supreme Court, Mr. Parekh is here. Sameer Parekh joins us on The Big Picture. Also Jagannadham Thunuguntla, who is equity head of SMC Global Capital. Also joining us on the show will be Mythili Bhusnurmath, who is the consulting editor at The Economic Times. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. First up, I want to get thoughts on the sentencing of Rajat Gupta. I'll start with you, Jagan. Numerous letters from luminaries like Bill Gates and Kofi Annan praising Gupta for his philanthropic, his humanitarian work, especially in Rwanda. Countless instances of praise from other quarters as well. He's got only 2 years in a minimum security prison, mind you, and a $5 million fine. Would you say that the plan worked, the defense plan worked, that he got off rather lightly considering the fact that he has been convicted of insider trading, a serious crime?
No, I think question is not about 2 years or 20 years. I think question is about the very fact that he has been made guilty, and also the very fact that he has been asked to go to jail. It is sufficiently to damage his reputation. I think it will not make such a big difference in the whole scheme of things, whether it's a 2 years or 10 years or 20 years. And the biggest worrisome part is that he is works on day-to-day basis with Obama, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and people look up to him. But unfortunately, the things have gone very quickly. I think this happens many times, that when power is in your control, so you tend to assume that nothing can defy you, nothing can catch you. I think that is exactly the point when the downfall actually starts. Moreover, he's a millionaire. He has lots of money. He wants to become a billionaire because throughout his life he was a consultant wherein he advises the people to make money. But he was looking at the people who is less talented than him becoming billionaires on the basis of his advice. He thought it's high time that I have to become the billionaire. His internal urge to get into that billionaire list, I think that has taken on him.
I'll come to Mr. Parekh in just a bit. I want to go to Mythili first and get her thoughts on the sentencings. Mythili, welcome to the show. Rajat Gupta getting 2 years in a minimum security prison. Is that the best he can hope for? Did he get off rather lightly?
I would imagine so, because if you look at a similar case of corporate fraud, but not insider trading in the Indian context, of the Satyam and Ramalinga Raju, what is quite surprising, of course, we've not been able to kind of convict him in any definite sense, but what is intriguing in the case of Rajat Gupta is the way so many top honchos, the UN Secretary General, everybody wrote letters of support in support of him, arguing that he had done a lot of good work and so he should be treated leniently. In the same case also, Raju had done a lot of philanthropic work, but when he was caught and when he in fact confessed to committing the fraud, there was no voice of support whatsoever from corporates. So it's a little intriguing that Rajat Gupta got so much support from corporate voices for what was definitely a wrong act on his part. Here was a man who had risen to the top, who had no need to do something like this. Agreed, he faltered maybe even only once, but a man in his position should not have betrayed the trust that was reposed in him by the Goldman Sachs, by the public at large, and that I think was where he really erred. Surprisingly, the judge seems to have let him off lightly, saying that he was a good man, and yes, there are occasions when good men do bad things. I'm not sure the same leniency would be shown to anybody else in his position.
Right. Let me get the lawyer on the panel, Mr. Parekh here. Is it a case of him having great connections all over the world that got him off lightly? And of course, he can't really replace his reputation, as he said himself, that his reputation is lost now.
You're right. Let me step back a little. There was an opportunity for him to enter into a plea bargain with SEC and get away with simple fine, which he in fact chose not to go ahead with. So in that sense, in a sense, he created the problem for himself. If he had just gone into a plea bargain, the matter would have got closed at that stage itself. Having said that, I think the point of SEC was to show that the system works and to make an example out of him that no matter how high you are, how connected you are, how powerful you are, the system will work. If you break the rules of the system, you will be caught and you will be sent to jail. In this case, even if he was sent to jail for a day, I think the point that the SEC was trying to make would have been made. And what is very peculiar about this case is that he in fact did not make any money out of this transaction. He seems to have given away this information for free, and that's I don't think there is a suggestion otherwise. And therefore, in these peculiar circumstances, I suppose 2 years probably is a fair sentence for him.
In fact, you answered my question that I was going to ask you after this, but I still will put the question to Jagannadham. The fact that Gupta himself did not get a single cent or a single penny from those the gains that Rajaratnam made, although the offence at the heart of it is breach of trust against Goldman Sachs. That's what the courts have accused him. That's what the prosecutors have said. It is a breach of trust that he committed. Am I right, Jagan, in assuming that even if Rajaratnam hadn't earned a single penny from the tips given by Gupta, Gupta's crime would have been the same and he would have been liable to the same sentence?
Yeah, the point is not about money is of course important in this kind of cases, but the question is about there is something called silent period. Whenever you make a earnings announcement, M&A announcement, any invest announcements, there is something called silent period. During that silent period, you are not even supposed to communicate to the media. When even for the small things, where in the depth of the financial crisis, when Warren Buffett was putting $5 billion, that's too sensitive a subject to reveal. I think that's to that extent it's damaging enough. Second is, even though he didn't get penny directly, I mean, there are enough views that maybe he would have got some other kind of benefit or any favor or anything like that. So very difficult to deny that side of the story. And one more aspect to the story is that just as sitting fees as board of directors of these big companies, the yearly fees that he gets is $25 million. That is in Indian currency 125 crores. And then just for sitting fees and sharing your advice. And then come on, then you are not supposed to do this.
Right. And let me go to Mythili for 1 second. Let's talk about the state of insider trading laws in India and what we are facing right now. Bear with me, Mythili. I'll just give you a couple of figures. Now, the first difficulty that authorities in India like SEBI have is to prove that there was insider trading. That is the toughest part. Now the investigator, whoever it is, has to establish cause. After that, the key frustration now that investigators often come across is establishing the cause and effect. SEBI has been demanding for a very long time, Mythili, tools such as access to wiretaps, to phone records, something that the US prosecutors had in this particular case, in Gupta's case. Now, nobody expects these tools to come either from the government or any other authority in the country. SEBI is kind of crippled, isn't it?
In some ways, but yes, certainly insider trading is very difficult to establish, which is why in the US also the SEC's success rate has been pretty low. And here too, it's only because of the wiretapes that frankly they were able to establish. Because even if you do have some kind of evidence, to have evidence that is strong enough to convict a person is very difficult. As it is in India, if you look at the conviction rates, they are very low because in our law, it is innocent till proved guilty. Now, how do you establish that very convincing kind of evidence which says that a person had access to information that nobody else had, and using this information, he benefited from it. To establish this link and beyond dispute is very difficult, which is why SEBI really hasn't had much success at all. It has been asking for additional tools like wiretapping, but I think this is something that the government will really hesitate to do, because in the case of US, you have lots of checks and balances. And even in this case, it took the prosecutors almost 5 years through very meticulous kind of investigations to establish. So I doubt if SEBI will, it doesn't have the tools, it doesn't have the staff, and I'm given the way the courts work in India, I'm really not sure that you will be able to get evidence strong enough to convict a person, even if you do have a hunch and you have some evidence. It would not be strong enough to stand the test of law.
Right, hold that thought, Mythili. We'll take a small break and we'll come back, and I want to discuss after the break the state of insider trading in India particularly. We'll concentrate on our own country after the break. Don't go anywhere, keep watching The Big Picture. Welcome back to The Big Picture. I have some figures with me that I want to share with the viewers. Insider trading in India, I think the word is rampant in the country. SEBI in 2011-2012 alone took up investigations of 24 insider trading cases and completed investigations of about 21 in last year alone. SEBI on its part has stepped up enforcement. Reliance Infrastructure and Reliance Natural Resources settled charges of breaching securities by paying about 25 crores each in 2011. In another instance, SEBI fined a former independent director of Ranbaxy Laboratories, VK Kaul, and for about 60 lakh in early 2012 for insider trading of shares. One more instance that came to light was Jayaprakash Associates Limited, JAL, the JP Group's engineering and construction arm. The executives, 3 senior executives, were charged about 70 lakhs for insider trading in the company's stock in 2008. Let me put the question to Mr. Sameer Parekh here. How big is insider trading in India really?
Okay, so of course, anecdotally speaking, it's very, very rampant. Nobody is scared of any insider trading investigation at all. And from what one hears and sees, I think giving tips is quite the norm across India. So nobody is really worried or scared about insider trading. In fact, there are regulations in place which require each company, each lawyer, each chartered accountant to have its compliance officer. I've not heard of anybody who does as far as insider trading is concerned.
Right. So would you say, Jagan, that because corporates take it not that seriously, that is why it's sort of giving an impetus to insider trading, even though corporates don't really want it?
No, I think sometimes it's difficult. It's a very thin line. I think a analyst call, I think you can call it as a sharing of the information on the basis of intelligent investor asking me the questions and I'm answering. But the same thing can be established as insider trading. So there is a very, very thin line. I think over a period of time it will evolve. Right. But having said that, difficult to deny.
You had a point to make.
Yeah, I think if let me step back again and take a broader picture as far as Indian rules are concerned. In India, insider trading is banned by the SEBI Act and their regulations made. Now, this is an administrative procedure. Unlike many other countries where you can go to a civil court, you can recover the money, you can actually go to a court and get back the money made by the insider, or you can file a criminal proceeding in a regular criminal process, like Rajat Gupta did. As you know, Rajat Gupta had objected to the administrative remedy in SEC, which SEC was following. And because he objected, SEC then took him to court. Of course, he probably expected that they'll take him to a civil court, but they took him to a criminal court, which is why he's going to jail now. Now, as opposed to all these different processes available in various countries, we have a single process. SEC is the prosecutor, SEBI in this case, is both the prosecutor and the judge. It has no real way of getting information. Only the compliance officer, whenever they find a violation, is supposed to inform SEBI. Now this can't work. You must have procedures by which whistleblowers will come and inform SEBI. You must have a procedure by which a company which has lost money can actually go to a civil court and recover the money they've lost. Unless you make it worthwhile for people to complain, worthwhile for people to actually bring out these cases of insider trading, they will not come out. SEBI by itself cannot really achieve much.
Let me ask Mythili what Jagan just said just a while back. He said that there is a thin line. Really, is the line too thin? Do we need to define more clearly what insider trading really is?
Well, it's very difficult to kind of put it entirely in black and white because, but I think it's very clear that the person who actually trades on insider information knows very well that this is information that he should not really part with, that this is something that he is privy to only because of the position that he enjoys, and hence it is pretty clear to him. So it is very difficult for SEBI to lay down exactly in black or white. But recently, Athar, in fact, SEBI has tightened the guidelines for insider trading. It has said, like unlike in the case of the SEC, where you do allow plea bargaining, and SEBI also used to allow consent agreements earlier. Recently, SEBI has tightened the law and said that we will not allow consent agreements in the case of insider trading.
Right.
So clearly, in that case, SEBI has much more difficult task in one way to establish, beyond doubt that insider trading has taken place. As long as you accepted consent orders, all it was required was the party would say, okay, we'll settle, we'll pay a certain fine without admitting to having done the wrongdoing. But now that SEBI has closed that route, one could argue that maybe SEBI's task has become much, much more difficult, even though it may be for a worthy cause.
Right. Jagat, the problem is also, to a large extent, enforcement and sentencing. Now, SEBI orders are challenged in tribunal courts all the time. Even the JP case that I mentioned, the Gore case, they set aside by the security, they went to SAT basically, Securities Appellate Tribunal, and they said for want of evidence, this case has no merit. What can SEBI and the government in fact do to make sure that insider trading cases don't get caught up in litigation as much as they are getting now?
Yeah, I think one is the SEBI of late has become quite vigilant. I think one thing is that definitely the things are improving. But having said that, getting that information and wiretapping, because I think even not now, even when the Home Ministry, when Mr. Chidambaram was there, when the phone tapping was happened, even at the minister level, so much of hue and cry has happened. And expecting SEBI, which I think naturally Home Ministry is a lot more powerful in the scheme of things. If expecting SEBI to do it, I think until and unless a regulatory authority is given, I think is very difficult. I think at this moment, I think it may be very sensitive subject.
Would you agree with what Jagan just said? It's kind of difficult in the current environment to do so?
I suppose you're asking specifically about wiretaps.
Wiretaps, other means that can get them, phone records.
Correct. So again, insider trading, as your other panelists just said, normally the person who does it knows. So therefore, I think wiretap is probably a little extreme end unless you know that this is happening and you have sufficient proof to actually start wiretapping. I don't know if wiretapping itself is the answer, but getting people to come forward and give information is probably the first step that SEBI should take. And thereafter, if once some credible information is there, then wiretapping is the next step, so to say. You can't generally start wiretapping all traders in security.
But do you think, like Mythili mentioned, now that the fact that it's out of the ambit of settlement now because of SEBI's new rules, do you think that is going to help?
Yes and no. See, the point is plea bargain or settlement or whatever you want to call it is conceptually a great idea, and if it works, it works. But in India, it's very easy to sabotage the system. So if the system could work, plea bargaining is a great way to enforce insider trading regulation. Instead, what we've done by the regulation is there's almost a deeming provision, it's a deeming fiction, that once a charge is laid, certain things happen, it's deemed that you acted on price-sensitive information, and it is then for the person who is accused to disprove that there was in fact any wrongful action on his part. Now when you make burden of proof so strong or so strict, actually the effect actually turns out to be the opposite. So so as you pointed out, the SAT typically often would find when there is such a deeming provision, such a strict provision.
They dismiss the case for want of evidence.
Correct, exactly. So therefore, despite such a deeming provision, it is very difficult. I don't think there is any conviction which has been upheld all the way to Supreme Court till date.
Right. Time for another break. We'll come back after this break and we'll discuss the lessons learned here from the Rajat Gupta sentencing and lessons overall for authorities in India as well. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come on The Big Picture. Welcome back to the big picture. We're discussing the Rajat Gupta sentencing and, of course, the state of insider trading laws and their implementation and enforcement inside India. Mythili Bhusnurmath, consulting editor of the Economic Times, is still with us. Mythili, keeping in pace with its counterparts, say in the US, like the SEC, India also has a Security Exchange Board of India Act 1991. And various regulations came after that in 1992, including the Security Exchange Board of India Prohibition of Insider Trading regulations in 1992. Now, this is generally done to basically govern shares of the company, trading by insiders and related disclosures. Now, under Indian law, an insider is prohibited from dealing in securities of the company based on unpublished price-sensitive information, or as they call it in the markets, UPSI. Is the SEBI Act of 1991 equipped enough to deal with insider trading in this day and age?
Well, Athar, if you look at it, no Securities and Exchange Board, whether it's in India or the SEC, really has all the tools. But what the regulator does need to do, and what happened in the case of SEC and the US, for instance, in this case, is that all regulators and even the crime detective agencies, like in this particular case, according to news reports, the first tip-off came to the FBI2 agents, which said that there seems to be a sudden increase in the profits of hedge funds. So this was just a tip. It was not received by the SEC, but it was received by two agents in the equivalent of the fraud unit, like our serious fraud office in India. And based on this, they started working. So basically over there, the systems work much better. And you have people who are professional, who know how to proceed. In India, SEBI is very often handicapped because it doesn't have the people. And even in our CBI or investigation agencies, the IB, we just don't have the people with that kind of professional competence to work on these tip-offs, to understand the significance of these tip-offs, which is why even though we have a serious fraud office, we have the SEBI Act, we've really not been able to do very much. At the same time, things like the Whistleblowers Act, if those could be passed, that would also make a difference. So I think it's a combination of not only lack of enforcement, but also lack of proper awareness, lack of proper tools.
Right. Jagan, how far behind are we, say, in the case of SEC and the FBI, our fraud units and our authorities? We're not even close, are we?
I think they are busy with many other cases. I think of late the Indian regulators have been so busy on many other things. I'm really surprised that...
And the enforcement agencies.
Yeah, and I wonder whether they will be coming back to insider trading, which itself is very difficult to establish. Even if they do, I think it will take many layers of clearing and all that. So anyways, I think its system is evolving. I think this is, and moreover, considering that new technologies, it becomes all the more easy for the people to get caught. I think people are aware of that.
But do you think...
it's not a foolproof system by that.
Do you think a white-collar crime like securities trading and insider trading, do you think that it will grow with the passage of time as our economy grows and as our equipment grows?
No, I don't think so. I think people are slowly understanding the seriousness of it. I think even in this case, I feel that Rajat Gupta case also, they want to show one high-profile man can be get caught. I think they want to send a fear, I think, so that it will become automatic discipline, because you can't put everybody on the street in the jail. Then jails are not sufficient. So because there will be some issues with almost everyone, whether it's small or big. The point is about if you put one high-profile man, that will settle at least 1,000 people under control. So I think the same mechanism can be deployed.
Right. So reflections on the Rajat Gupta case, Mr. Parekh. What is the fallout for people in India, for traders, for people who are doing the same thing, who are inside trading inside India? Do you think that will drive any sort of fear among them? Because this is happening far away in the US. We have to remember that.
Absolutely. I think in the US they made an example of a person, and definitely in US people would be scared far more than ever before. But having said that, this panel discussion itself shows that even in India now, people are discussing about it because of an example of a person, and realizing the significance and importance or the offense involved in insider trading. But having said that, there has to be the will, there has to be the mechanism, as you rightly pointed out. And I don't think SEBI alone is equipped. SEBI must work with Economic Offences Wing or other investigating agency who may then have power to wiretap, etc. Working in coordination possibly we can do. But first there must be intent. First people must realize the seriousness of the crime. I'm not even sure people really appreciate or understand how significantly important it is to prevent insider trading for maintaining the system as it functions, for maintaining the integrity of the stock exchanges.
Right. Last comment on the show from Mythili Bhusnurmath. Mythili, what are the lessons for corporates here really? Now, I mean, there is really no foolproof way of ensuring that employees or high-ranking officers or members of boards, board members refrain from trading information. What can the corporates do really to discourage such a practice?
I think basically corporates need to raise the level of ethics and integrity, things like corporate governance, and these are the issues which in India so far have never received the importance it is due. But I would agree entirely with Mr. Parekh that as awareness grows and corporates a level of ethics, awareness of these things grows, and recently there has been a talk about right to information being extended even to the private sector. Maybe things like that will help, because ultimately people have to realize that what they are doing is a wrong, and they must realize also that they will be punished very severely if they're found indulging in it. That, I think, is the key.
Right. On that note, Mythili, we'll have to end the show. I must thank all my guests for joining me on The Big Picture. Mythili Bhusnurmath, thank you for joining us. Jagannadham, Thunuguntla, as well as Sameer Parekh for joining me on The Big Picture. Of course, like my guest today said, awareness is growing. Not many people really know what a white-collar crime like insider trading is. But yes, it is rampant in India. Corporates indulge in it. High-ranking officials indulge in it. Of course, SEBI needs more teeth. SEBI needs more tools like they have asked the government as well. Perhaps wiretapping is a bit too harsh right now in the case of India, but perhaps you never know. If it grows, that there might be a day when wiretapping might be essential to catch white-collar criminals like this. That's all the time we have on The Big Picture tonight. Thank you for joining us. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you.